So Guardian Mastery spoiler season is done and gone, and by this weekend at Gen Con, we will likely have the full set revealed, and honestly, it's probably already by the time that this video goes live. Now, one thing that has surprised me thus far out of the spoilers and the Demo Deck Bravo reveal, I didn't actually have Guardian Mill on my Mastery Pack bingo card. It's a very interesting addition, especially into a class already very strong with a fatigue archetype. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my Flesh and Blood friends, and welcome back to the channel, and happy Flesh and Blood Friday. Now, the supplemental sets of old may have retired and gone away, but the one thing that they offered was different playstyles for our classes, sub-archetypes, or whatever you want to call them. Now, recall that sets like Everfest did a lot of this for our various classes, but it was in that very set that the Heave and the 3x Seismic generation for Velda, and Velda herself, of course, premiered. Now, with Mastery Pack Guardian, we're poised to see a lot more of this, obviously focused entirely on that class instead of like the old supplemental sets. But functionally, they're seeing, kind of the same type of concept as a supplemental set, kind of going wider on what the class, in this case Guardian, can do. And one of the things that has stood out to me from this is Guardian-based mill. Now, mill is a really scary word in TCGs, right? It evokes a range of emotions from all of us. So as we kick off today's discussion, I do want to quickly discuss the concept of mill in TCGs and how it relates specifically over to Flesh and Blood. Because it is no secret that many folks in the TCG community strongly dislike, even hate, playing against mill. But it's also very important to keep in mind that the mill archetype, at least within the wider world of TCGs, is often tied to disruption or denial. Counterspells, bouncing, snapping, and so on, right? And heck, let's just throw in the occasional board wipe every now and then for good measure. And that is actually where I believe the majority of the mill hate comes from. Now, to be fair, not all of it, to be sure, but the majority of it. And it makes sense, right? When we sit down and we build a deck and then we bring it to the table, we want to play that deck. We want to execute our game plan. Win or lose, we want to do our thing. And when we sit down and we're unable to do that, with every move we try and make being rejected, it can be incredibly frustrating. So frustrating, especially as you have to sit there smelling your opponent as they exude an air of smug superiority while simultaneously exuding fecal particles into the air. So, hey, look, I get it, folks, right? But remember, the mill archetype obviously focuses on winning the game by running the opponent out of cards rather than attacking the life total. So if you actually remove the denial and disruption side of things, it actually becomes less negative of an experience. So there's mill as we think about it, and then there's aggro mill, where the opponent is effectively racing to deplete your deck before they deplete your life or you deplete theirs, right? And in my opinion, this is functionally how mill presents in Flesh and Blood. It's not just playing a land and milling cards because we have our little crab friends in play. In Flesh and Blood, it actually takes the commitment of cards through the dealing of interactable damage to accomplish that task. So let's take the new card, Grind Them Down. This is a 3 for 7, 6, or 5, depending on pitch, with Crush that takes 4 cards from the top of your deck. Again, if you cover 4 of it on the red version, it's just damage. Mill isn't even relevant. Another example is the new card Leave a Dent, a 0-drop blue non-attack with Go Again, which imparts Crush. Discard the top 4 cards of their deck on your next Guardian attack. This is incredibly fascinating as it's tied to any attack, meaning it could go into effect on a weapon if so desired. But again, 2 things here. First, it imparts Crush, meaning that as long as you're taking 3 or less, it's completely off. And second, that's a pretty card-intensive move for the Guardian player. Guardian Mill being tied to Crush is more of an aggro mill type playstyle. It doesn't necessarily seek to disrupt your turn, at least at the moment. You can still choose to take the full hit at a cost, of course, of raw damage in the top of your deck, which admittedly can be a pretty huge cost. But it doesn't disrupt your immediate turn or make you stumble, again, immediately. It simply adds another factor to the game, which is managing both your life total and your deck total. And if we're being honest, we've already had this to a certain extent in Assassin. And honestly, I think this is even preferable to playing against the Assassin mill style personally, because Assassin does have disruption, hand disruption, and they are very, very good at it. Guardian has the potential to mill more effectively in terms of raw cards, but they have to really work for it, and it has to cost them cards too. And remember, if the Guardian doesn't have any cards, they can't mill you, right? So there's a lot of good reasons to be skeptical of the Guardian Mill archetype in both directions. Certainly, one of the potential weaknesses of this specific Guardian Mill setup is how it's tied in many ways to the Clash Casino. Now, while Test of Iron Grip isn't technically a mill card since it attacks the hand, it's functionally going to be tied well into this playstyle. Test of Iron Grip is absolutely insane. But you gotta win the Clash. This card alone is going to fuel rage quits of a large number of Guardian players. Mark my words, my friends. Clashing off this card and top decking another copy of it, or another one of your D-Reacts, you know what's going to happen in your top 8 match, of course, with everyone watching on stream. Womp womp. Daily Grind is also very interesting, but to the same end, could be very frustrating. Daily Grind is a non-attack aura that you drop in play for cost 0. Functionally, it lasts for one of your opponent's turns, going away at the beginning of your next turn. While it's in play, each time you defend with an action card, you clash, and the loser mills a card. Now that's potentially pretty devastating, but also could just turn into nothing because you play it before you draw. So we start to see an inherent irony of sorts with how a lot of the mill effects are tied to winning clashes, while themselves not all being clash-winning cards. There's an awful lot of push-pull there, while at the same time needing to still be able to defend effectively and land the crush effects on which to mill. Now, one that I really do like to that end is Peck Perfect, which, funnily enough, was my nickname back in college. Now, Peck Perfect is a red on-curve 5-for-9 Guardian attack, and whenever a card defends it, you clash, milling the top of the loser's deck. Not only is this a perfect push-pull, offering 9 raw damage, which they could totally just take to the face if they so choose, or they can defend and risk their deck. The bonus with this card specifically, though, is that copies of it actually help to win clashes. I really, really like this card, and it is by far the best tool I've seen for this particular Clash Casino archetype. So chef's kiss on this one, and that is why I'm actually dubbing the Guardian Mill style, inherently tied to being able to simultaneously deal damage and present the threat of mill, a mill kill. Now, my Star Wars Destiny friends may remember my old Jyn Cassian was my favorite deck back in the day, being able to grind 2 angles. If they defend heavily, we can attack, or if they go aggressive, we can attack their deck, and have the ability to pivot as the game went on. It took a ton of skill. It was incredibly challenging, but very rewarding. I really, really loved that deck, by the way. Oh, the memories. Oh, but this is not Fab. This is Destiny. But I see this Guardian Mill Kill style as being a very similar approach. When do you turtle up? When do you take a hit and crack back? Seems like a lot of skill and learning involved in mastering this particular play style. Now, the pitfall, though, is are all the tools there quite yet? I don't know. At the time of this video, I haven't seen the full set, but it's something I'm going to keep my eyes on for sure. Now, so in closing, while sure, mill is always a scary word, dredging up horrible memories of past games in all of our past lives, I do think that the Guardian Mill archetype, at least for now, looks like it's going to be pretty manageable to play into. And at least out of the gate, if I'm being honest, I will take that over Fatigue CYB basically any day of the week, right? However, Guardian also already has plenty of methods with which to play Fatigue, which in many aspects has or is, or whatever you want to call it, is Fab's version of mill control in a way. Don't worry about that whole Enigma CYB thing. We're over that. But honestly, I don't really see this as being any worse than that, and I'd rather have to consider how to intelligently block a crush card than just having to endure 40 D-Reacts life gain and having them swing hammer every turn for like an hour. That's kind of boring, right? So while sure, this mill kill thing has a lot more raw potential than the assassin version, At least it puts the onus on the defending player on how to manage their life and deck totals versus being able to pop off for a full turn. So yes, I do really like this from a design standpoint. I like the risks, I like the push-pull, and I like how they're taking a pretty conservative approach overall to the concept of mill, as applied, of course, to Flesh and Blood. So let me know your thoughts. Do you agree, disagree, or do you just hate the word mill so much and so badly that you slammed the dislike button right away? I get it. Either way, let me know below. Thanks, my friends, and go Commando.